The Orion arm of the galaxy was a vast place, filled with stars, unknown worlds, and civilizations that rose and fell like sparks in the dark. For thousands of years, the Villari Empire had ruled large parts of this region. Their ships were sleek and silver, their warriors unmatched in combat. To many alien species, the Villari were not just rulers, they were nightmares whispered about in secret. When the human starship Valiant Dawn entered Villari territory, no one expected mercy. The humans were explorers, not conquerors. They had crossed countless light years searching for habitable worlds, trade partners, and knowledge. Captain Darius Kane, a man in his early 30s with a scar across his cheek, commanded the ship. He was a soldier once before the long journey into space turned him into an explorer. The warning came quickly. A Villari fleet appeared on their sensors, surrounding the Valiant Dawn in moments. The Villari ships were larger, faster, and more powerful. Their weapons could tear through human shields in seconds. The crew braced themselves for death, but the Villari did not fire. Instead, a single message was transmitted. The image of a tall, armored warrior filled the bridge screen. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes sharp and golden. She wore ceremonial armor decorated with strange symbols, and in her hand was a curved blade glowing with faint energy. She was General Saria, one of the most feared Villari commanders. "Humans," she said, her voice strong but calm. "Your presence in our space is forbidden. By Villari law, I should destroy your ship and scatter your ashes among the stars." The human crew held their breath. Darius stood firm. "If that is your law, then why haven't you done it already?" he asked. Saria's golden eyes narrowed, and then she smiled. Not kindly, but with interest. "Because your kind is new. I have studied many species. Few are worth remembering, but sometimes I offer a chance." "A chance?" Darius asked carefully. "A duel," Saria declared. "One of you against me. Victory proves worth. Defeat proves weakness. It is the way of my people." The bridge fell silent. Everyone turned to Darius. He knew what they were thinking. If no one stepped forward, the Villari would destroy them all. If someone fought, it would almost certainly mean death. Darius straightened. "I will fight you." The crew protested, but he silenced them with a look. He was their captain. It was his duty to stand for them. Saria nodded once, as though she expected nothing less. A shuttle carried Darius to a Villari warship. The arena was a wide circular chamber, its walls lined with glowing crystals. Villari soldiers watched from above, their expressions cold and unreadable. In the center of the floor, Saria waited, her blade in hand. Darius had only a standard combat knife and light armor borrowed from the ship's stores. He felt like a gladiator thrown to lions, but fear did not control him. He had fought in wars back on Earth, had seen death and hardship. He would not falter now. The duel began with a clash of metal. Saria moved faster than any human could, her strikes strong and precise. Darius blocked one, dodged another, but the sheer force behind her blows pushed him back. She was stronger, faster, and better armed, yet Darius did not surrender. He fought with creativity, using every trick he had learned as a soldier. He feinted, dodged, and even used the arena walls to push himself into unexpected angles of attack. For every wound she gave him, he returned with determination. His blood spilled on the floor, but his spirit refused to break. Then it happened. Saria slashed across his shoulder and crimson blood sprayed. Before Darius could step back, she moved close, placing her blade at his throat. Instead of killing him, she touched his wound with her finger, gathering a drop of blood. The Villari had a ritual, tasting the blood of a worthy opponent. It was a way to measure strength, not of the body, but of the soul. She raised her hand to her lips and tasted the blood. In that instant, Saria froze. The Villari soldiers watching grew restless, whispering among themselves. Saria's eyes widened, her expression breaking for the first time. The taste was not what she expected. She had tasted the blood of countless warriors before. It always carried pride, rage, or despair. But human blood, and this human's blood, was different. In it she felt sorrow, memories of loss, but also courage and hope so strong, it burned like fire. She felt humanity's endless struggle to survive against odds, the will to fight not for conquest but for something greater. It shook her to the core, her hand trembled. For the first time in years she lowered her blade. Her soldiers gasped in disbelief. "You," Saria whispered, her voice breaking. "You are my end." Darius, bleeding but unbroken, looked at her in confusion. "What do you mean?" he asked. She did not answer. Her soldiers demanded she finish the fight, but she raised her hand, silencing them. Then in a voice filled with strange emotion, she declared, "This duel is unfinished. This human is spared." The Valari audience erupted in anger. Mercy was not their way. But none dared challenge their general. Darius was escorted back to his ship, wounded but alive. The crew cheered his survival, though confusion filled their hearts. Why had the alien spared him? What did her words mean? Alone in her chamber, Saria pressed her hand to her lips, still feeling the warmth of human blood. She had fought countless enemies, tasted the essence of many lives, but never before had she been shaken like this. The strength of humans was not in their muscles or weapons. It was in their spirit. And for reasons she could not yet explain, Saria felt that this human, this Captain Darius Kane, was destined to change everything. Far away on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, Darius looked at the stars with a heavy heart. He had survived the duel, but the war with the Valari had only begun. And somewhere in the silence of the galaxy, the words of the alien general echoed in his mind. "You're my end, human." The duel was over, but its shadow lingered. The crew of the Valiant Dawn tried to celebrate Captain Darius Kane's survival, yet the fear in their hearts remained. The Valari were known for cruelty, for domination, for crushing entire civilizations without hesitation. For one of their generals to show mercy, that was something no history book could explain. Darius sat in the medical bay, his shoulder wrapped in bandages. The ship's doctor fussed over his wounds, but Darius's mind was elsewhere. Her words echoed again and again. "You're my end, human." What did she mean? Was it a threat? A promise? Or something even stranger? He closed his eyes, trying to rest, but images from the duel replayed in his mind. Saria's golden eyes widening, her hand trembling as though his blood carried more weight than steel. Meanwhile, aboard the Valari flagship, General Saria faced questions she could not answer. Her second-in-command, a fierce warrior named Tayrak, confronted her in the War Council chamber. "General, this is against all law. You tasted the human's blood. You had him at your mercy. Yet you let him live. Why?" Saria's jaw tightened. She could not explain what she felt in front of her warriors. To admit weakness was shameful. To admit confusion was dangerous. Yet she could not lie either. "This human is not like the others we have fought," she said slowly. "His blood carried strength I have never known. There is something in his kind we must study before we destroy them." "Study?" Tayrak spat. "They are nothing compared to us. We have conquered empires older and stronger than theirs. Why waste time?" Saria's eyes flashed and her voice turned sharp. "Because something tells me this is different. Obey my command, Tayrak. That is all you need to know." Tayrak bowed reluctantly, but suspicion filled his gaze. The Valari were loyal, but they were also ambitious. Any sign of weakness could give rivals the chance to seize power. Saria knew she was walking a dangerous path. That night she retreated to her private chamber away from the eyes of her soldiers. There she opened the ancient records of Valari conquests. For centuries they had consumed worlds, taking resources, enslaving survivors, or wiping them out. Victory was their only truth. But never before had she hesitated. Never before had she felt fear. She replayed the duel in her mind. The human should have fallen quickly. Yet he fought like no other. Every move filled not only with skill but with something deeper. Even when wounded, he rose again. Even when defeat seemed certain, he refused to surrender. Valari blood carried pride, rage, and dominance. Human blood carried hope. Hope so powerful it pierced through her very being. Her hands shook as she whispered to herself, "Why does this human shake me so?" Back on the Valiant Dawn, Darius gathered his senior officers. The crew had questions, and it was his duty to answer. Lieutenant Harris, the youngest officer on board, spoke first. "Captain, what exactly happened in that duel? Why did she let you live?" Darius leaned against the table, his expression thoughtful. "I don't know," he admitted. "She could have killed me a dozen times. But when she tasted my blood, something changed in her." "Tasted your blood?" Harris repeated, horrified. "It's their ritual," Darius explained. "The Valari believe a warrior's blood reveals their spirit. She must have seen something in me." In us, the room fell silent. For the first time, the crew began to realize that perhaps humanity had something the Valari did not understand. Commander Vale, his second-in-command, frowned. "Captain, this may be our chance. If their general is uncertain, we may have time to find allies or strengthen our defenses." But we can't rely on her mercy forever. Darius nodded.
You're right.
The Velari are still our enemies. But there's something in Saria's reaction we need to understand. If there's even a chance to turn this war into something else, we have to try. The days that followed were tense. The Velari fleet shadowed the valiant dawn, never attacking, never leaving. It was as if Saria herself was watching them, waiting. Darius used the time to study everything humans knew about the Velari. Their culture, their wars, their rituals. He discovered something unsettling. The Velari valued strength above all else. They saw other species as prey, but sometimes they spared those who proved themselves in combat. Those rare spared species were not free. They were studied, dissected, and tested until the Velari learned every secret. That was the future humanity faced, unless they could change the game. One night, as Darius stood alone on the observation deck staring at the stars, a message came. A private channel, encrypted in a way his crew could not trace. The voice that spoke was unmistakable. "Captain Darius Kane," Saria said softly. His heart tensed. "How are you contacting me?" "I have my ways." "Do not ask questions," she replied. Her voice, though calm, carried a weight of conflict. "I should not speak to you, but I must." Darius took a deep breath. "Then speak. Why did you spare me?" There was silence, then her words came slowly. "Because when I tasted your blood, I felt something I have never felt. It was not just strength. It was not just courage. It was defiance, a will to rise again even when broken. My people do not have this. We conquer, we rule, but we do not endure. You endure." Darius listened carefully. He realized now that Saria was not speaking as a general, but as someone struggling with something she could not explain. "And why tell me this?" he asked. Her voice trembled, though she tried to hide it. "Because I fear what it means. I fear you, human. Not because of your weapons, but because of what you carry inside. If the High Council learns what I felt, they will not hesitate. They will destroy your kind before you become a threat." Darius's hand tightened into a fist. "So what do you want from me?" Another pause. Then she whispered, "I do not know. Perhaps I want to understand. Perhaps I want to see if my fear is true." Before he could answer, the channel cut. The silence of space returned, leaving Darius with more questions than answers. The next morning, the Velari fleet finally moved. Not to attack, but to vanish into faster-than-light travel, leaving the humans alive. The crew cheered at their survival, but Darius stood at the window, watching the fading glow. He knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Far away, Saria stood in her command chamber, her soldiers unaware of the secret storm raging inside her. She pressed her hand to her lips, remembering the taste of human blood, the spark of hope that shook her empire's foundations. To her warriors, she was still the unbroken general, but to herself she whispered words no Velari would ever dare admit. "If I follow this path, I may betray everything I am, and yet, this human may already be my destiny." The silence of space could be comforting, but on the valiant dawn it felt heavy. The crew had survived their encounter with the Velari fleet, yet the tension lingered like an invisible weight pressing on their shoulders. Every officer knew the truth. The Velari were not gone. They had withdrawn, yes, but not forever. Captain Darius Kane spent long hours in his cabin reviewing logs, reports, and star charts. His crew trusted him, but trust alone could not fight fleets of silver warships. His thoughts returned again and again to General Saria. Her words during the duel, her strange mercy, and her secret message haunted him. Why had she spared him? Why warn him? Could she be trusted at all? Meanwhile, across the stars, Saria walked through the quiet halls of her flagship. Her soldiers bowed as she passed, their eyes filled with pride and loyalty. Yet behind their stares she sensed whispers. Rumors of her hesitation in the duel had spread. To Velari warriors, hesitation was weakness, and weakness was unforgivable. Her second-in-command, Tayrak, kept a close eye on her. In meetings, his tone carried sharpness. In training halls, his warriors watched her too carefully. She knew if she faltered again, if she showed even a hint of doubt, the High Council would hear of it. But Saria's mind was not on her council or rivals. It was on the human. At night, when she was alone, she opened human records her spies had gathered. She studied their history, their wars, their culture. She read of cities built and destroyed, of soldiers who fought for freedom, of explorers who risked everything to reach the stars. She watched old Earth recordings, speeches, songs, stories. And slowly a picture of humanity formed in her mind. Humans were fragile compared to Villari. Their bodies broke more easily, their lifespans were shorter, their technology less advanced. Yet despite all this, they endured. They rebuilt after every fall. They carried hope even in the darkest hours. It disturbed her because it was something her own people lacked. The Villari were strong, yes, but they had no hope. Only dominance. For the first time in her life, Saria began to doubt the empire she served. On the Valiant Dawn, the crew worked tirelessly. Supplies were low and the ship needed repairs after its long journey. Commander Vale, practical and sharp-minded, warned Darius, "Captain, we can't wander forever. We need allies. If the Villari come again, we won't survive." Darius nodded. "I know, but allies are scarce. Most species fear the Villari too much to stand with us. Then we'll have to give them a reason," Vale said firmly. "We must prove humanity is worth more than fear." That night, Darius found himself unable to sleep. He went to the observation deck, staring at the stars. And there, like before, the secret channel activated. Her voice filled the room. Calm, strong, yet carrying something he could not define. "Captain Kane," Saria said. Darius tensed. "You risk much contacting me again?" "And you risk much listening," she replied. He almost smiled. "Why do you keep reaching out to me, Saria? You spared me once. That alone is enough to make your own people question you. So why continue?" Silence lingered before she answered. "Because I cannot ignore what I felt. I cannot erase the truth. You are different. Your people are different. And I do not know if that difference is salvation or destruction." Darius studied the dark view of space. Maybe it can be both. Humanity doesn't seek conquest, but we fight when forced. That's our nature. "I have seen it," Saria admitted. "I watched you rise again and again, even when your body should have failed. Villari do not rise once they are broken. We conquer or we die. There is no middle path." "Then maybe that's the difference," Darius said softly. "You conquer to survive. We endure to live." Her voice grew quieter, almost thoughtful. "Perhaps that is why I fear you." The channel closed before Darius could reply. Days passed. The Valiant Dawn traveled carefully, avoiding Villari patrols, searching for safe systems. Yet no matter where they went, the shadow of the Villari followed. Darius knew the Empire would not ignore humanity for long. War was coming, and Saria herself would one day stand on the battlefield again. Whether as friend or foe, he did not know. Far away, Saria stood before the Villari High Council. The grand chamber was carved from black stone, illuminated by rings of glowing energy. The council members were ancient, their armor decorated with centuries of victory. One of them, Councilor Vera, spoke sharply. "General Saria, reports reach us of your hesitation. You tasted the humans' blood and did not strike. Explain yourself." Saria bowed her head, hiding the storm inside. "The human was worthy. To destroy without study would be wasteful. We may learn much from their kind before they are crushed." The councilors whispered among themselves. Some nodded, agreeing that knowledge was valuable. Others frowned, suspecting weakness. Councilor Vera's eyes narrowed. "See that your curiosity does not weaken your duty. Humanity must fall. If they resist, their worlds will burn. Do not forget who you are, Saria." "I will not forget," she replied. But in her heart she knew the truth was already slipping from her grasp. Weeks later, fate brought Darius and Saria together again. The Valiant Dawn landed on a barren moon to gather resources. As the crew worked, Villari scouts appeared. Tension filled the air, weapons raised, ready for blood. But then a familiar figure stepped forward, General Saria herself. Her soldiers glared at the humans, but she raised a hand, stopping them. "Stand down," she ordered. Darius walked forward cautiously, his hand near his weapon but not drawn. The two faced each other in the cold silence of the moon. "You risk much by being here," Darius said. "As do you," Saria replied. The crew and Villari soldiers watched in uneasy silence as the two leaders spoke. "You said once that I was your end," Darius said. "What did you mean?" Saria's golden eyes flickered. "I meant that you are unlike any enemy I have faced. If I continue down this path, I will either destroy you, or you will destroy everything I believe in. Either way, my destiny is tied to yours." Darius studied her carefully. He could not trust her fully. Yet something in her voice carried honesty, even sorrow. "You don't want this war," he said. She did not answer. Instead, she looked at the stars above the barren moon. "What I want no longer matters. My people demand it. Your people will resist. And in the clash between us, only one truth will remain." For a moment, there was silence. Then, almost too quietly to hear, Saria whispered, "But part of me hopes that truth will not be ours, but yours." Before Darius could reply, she turned and walked away, her soldiers following. On the Valiant Dawn, the crew argued over the meeting. Some called her a liar, a trick. Others thought there was a chance of peace. But Darius knew better. He had seen her eyes, had heard her voice. She was torn between duty and something she could not name. And in that fragile shadow between war and peace, a strange bond was forming, one that could either save humanity or doom it. The galaxy trembled on the edge of war. The Velari High Council had decided that humanity must be crushed, their colonies burned, and their fleets annihilated. Rumors of a human species that could endure the impossible had spread, and now the Council feared not just defeat, but embarrassment. Humanity could not survive, they declared. It was their duty to ensure it. Captain Darius Kane stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, looking at the star systems on the tactical map. Each dot represented human colonies, most small, fragile, and poorly defended. His crew worked quietly, but tension ran thick in the air. "We don't have enough ships to face the Velari fleet head-on," Commander Vale said, her eyes scanning the map. "We'll have to rely on strategy, stealth, and speed." Darius nodded. "We'll divide our colonies into safe zones, evacuate civilians when needed, and use hit-and-run tactics against their smaller patrols. But we must assume the High Council will send their best fleet soon." Even as he spoke, his thoughts wandered to Saria. She had warned him before. She had stopped her warriors from attacking, and she had risked her honor and her position by showing hesitation. But could he trust her completely? Could a Velari general truly stand against her own empire? Meanwhile, aboard the Velari flagship, Saria faced a storm of opposition. Her soldiers whispered, her counselors glared, and Tayrak's suspicion burned like a sword. "You hesitate too long, General," Counselor Vera said sharply during a meeting. "Your people await guidance. Humanity cannot escape our wrath forever." Saria met her gaze. "I understand, but rushing to destroy them will cost us more than we know. There is a force in humans that you have never faced. They endure, they hope, and that makes them dangerous in ways you cannot calculate." "Dangerous? They are weak," Vera hissed. "Weak! Yet you treat them with mercy. If you do not strike, the Council will act without you." Saria's jaw tightened. "Then I will act. I will do what is necessary. But I will not underestimate them, and I will not ignore what I have seen in their captain." Her words, though firm, carried the weight of hesitation. In her mind, she replayed the duel, the taste of Darius's blood, the spark of hope that should not have existed. That spark haunted her, reminding her that the path she was on was not straightforward. Back on the Valiant Dawn, Darius coordinated the evacuation of a nearby colony, under threat from a Velari strike fleet. Small human ships darted like fireflies among the moons and asteroid fields, carrying civilians to safety. Every engagement with Velari scouts tested his crew's skill and courage. Despite their disadvantage, humans showed creativity and adaptability. They laid traps, used terrain and gravity wells, and struck from unexpected angles. Each victory, small as it was, built confidence and hope. During one engagement, Darius personally led a squadron to intercept Velari ships attempting to cut off the evacuation. He maneuvered through asteroid belts, dodged energy beams, and launched counterattacks. The Velari were strong, but they were unprepared for the unpredictable, the cleverness that humanity wielded like a weapon. As the battle ended, Darius felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Humanity had survived again, but only barely. He knew the High Council would respond with overwhelming force soon, and he could not fight forever without help. Then, through encrypted channels, Saria's voice came again. "Captain Kane," she said calmly, "I am acting against my orders. The Council will strike soon. They intend to destroy your colonies before I can stop them." Darius frowned. "Then act. Don't hesitate. You know what you saw in our people?" "I cannot act completely," she admitted. "Not yet. I must protect my position enough to continue helping you. But I will give you what you need to survive this first strike." Through her intelligence and subtle guidance, Darius learned the fleet movements, predicted ambushes, and avoided traps. Saria's intervention saved thousands of lives, though none of her soldiers knew she had helped. The human crew began to sense something extraordinary. For the first time, an enemy general was aiding them without recognition or reward. They did not yet understand why, but hope grew. Humanity had survived impossible odds before, but now they had a hidden advantage. Someone who understood their resilience, someone who feared the human spirit more than their weapons. Tayrak, aboard the Valari flagship, had begun to suspect her. He watched her closely as she manipulated battle reports, sending subtle misinformation to the High Council. One wrong move could expose her, yet she persisted. "General," he said one evening, "your actions put you and your command at risk. If the Council discovers this, it will be your end." Saria did not flinch. "Then I will face it. Humanity is worth the risk." Tayrak's eyes narrowed. "Do not underestimate the Council's patience or their power. One misstep and everything will fall." "I know," she said softly, "but sometimes the right choice is worth more than obedience." The war escalated. Valari fleets began a full-scale attack on outer human colonies. Darius coordinated defenses, his crew moving like a single organism, each member relying on skill, courage, and trust. The human forces were vastly outnumbered, yet each engagement showcased their ingenuity. One fleet of Valari ships advanced on a mining colony. Humans used magnetic fields to redirect asteroid debris, creating sudden barriers. They deployed stealth drones to confuse Valari targeting systems. Every move was calculated but also unpredictable, designed to survive against overwhelming odds. Darius's heart pounded as he led his ships through the chaos. He could feel the danger in every pulse of the sensors, in every energy beam that flashed past. Yet even in the midst of battle, he felt something deeper, the spark Saria had seen, the determination to endure, to fight even when all seemed lost. Finally, the turning point came. Saria herself moved her personal fleet in subtle coordination with Darius's forces. She struck key Valari supply lines, delayed reinforcements, and created openings that humans exploited. Each maneuver was hidden from her own soldiers, a secret rebellion against the Council. The Valari High Council sensed irregularities in the battle. Confusion spread among their generals. Some whispered of disobedience, some suspected betrayal. Saria's careful actions had given humanity the chance to survive the first wave of attacks. Darius, exhausted and wounded from countless skirmishes, realized the truth. Humanity had not survived because they were stronger. They had survived because someone had seen what made them different: hope, endurance, and spirit, and had chosen to protect it. In a rare moment of calm, Darius spoke to his crew. "We are not just fighting ships or weapons. We are fighting with our hearts, with our will, and with our courage. That is something no enemy can take from us." The crew nodded, inspired. Every human knew the risks, but they also knew the truth. Their spirit was their greatest weapon. Meanwhile, Saria returned to her flagship alone, her heart heavy. She had acted against her people, risked her life and honor, and yet she could not stop the war entirely. The High Council would come again, stronger and more determined, but in her heart she carried a new truth. Humanity was not just another species to conquer. They were something entirely different, something she could not destroy with weapons or laws, and somewhere deep inside she feared that Captain Darius Kane was not only humanity's greatest hope, but her own reckoning. As the stars glimmered over the horizon of battlefields and distant colonies, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The storm of war had begun, but the outcome remained uncertain. One thing was clear: the rising storm would change everything, and choices made now would echo across light years. And Saria, the greatest warrior of the Valari Empire, stood at a crossroads. One path led to loyalty, obedience, and annihilation. The other path led to something she had never experienced before: trust, understanding, and perhaps alliance. The war was no longer only about fleets or weapons. It was about will, spirit, hope. And in that truth, the human captain and the Valari general would each face the most difficult challenge of their lives. The galaxy trembled with the roar of war. Valari fleets, vast and shimmering, advanced on human colonies, leaving trails of energy beams in their wake. Humanity's defenses were strong but outnumbered and outgunned. Ships burned in the darkness, explosions lighting the void like distant fireworks. Captain Darius Kane stood on the bridge of the Valiant Dawn, His uniform scorched and his hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. Every decision he made carried the weight of thousands of lives. Every move had to be precise. Yet even in the chaos, he felt the spark of something stronger than fear. Hope. "Captain," Commander Vale said, her voice tense, "they're focusing on our outer colonies first. If we don't intervene, millions will die before reinforcements arrive." Darius nodded. "We intervene. We'll split the Volari fleet, hit their supply lines, and give the civilians a chance to escape. Today, humanity fights not just for survival, but for the right to endure." Across the stars, General Saria faced the Council's wrath. The High Council demanded complete obedience, destroy humanity or face execution. Volari law left no room for mercy. Yet she had already acted against their orders multiple times. Her fleet had delayed attacks, sabotaged strikes, and subtly assisted humans. Tayrak approached her privately, his expression hard. "General, this is the last chance. If the Council discovers your actions, they will destroy you. You risk everything." Saria's golden eyes met his. "I know, but sometimes survival is not about obedience. Sometimes survival is about the choices you make." Tayrak's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He could not sway her. The final battle began near a dying star system. Humanity's fleet, small and battered, faced the full might of the Volari Empire. Ships collided in violent bursts of light, energy beams slicing through shields, leaving twisted metal drifting through space. Darius led a strike squadron through asteroid belts, using debris as cover. Every maneuver tested their skill and courage. Each human pilot understood that failure meant death, but also that success meant hope for countless others. Suddenly, the Volari flagship appeared, its energy shields blazing. On board, Saria watched as her warriors prepared to crush the humans completely. She felt a heavy weight in her chest, the knowledge that her final decision could determine the fate of millions. The Council demanded obedience, but she knew the truth. Humanity was not just another species. They carried something the Volari lacked: endurance, hope, and a spirit that refused to be broken. Her hand hovered over the command console. Then, with a steady breath, she acted. Volari ships turned against their own fleet. Supply lines were severed, communications disrupted, and openings were created in their formations. Chaos erupted among the Volari forces. Soldiers shouted in confusion, unsure whether to obey or retreat. Darius noticed the sudden disorder and realized the truth immediately. "They're turning on each other," he exclaimed. "Someone inside is helping us." He acted without hesitation. "All squadrons, follow the path opening ahead. This is our chance." Human ships darted through the chaos, striking key Volari vessels, rescuing fleeing colonies, and buying precious time. Every human movement reflected strategy, courage, and hope, the very qualities that had shaken Saria in their first encounter. Meanwhile, Saria engaged the Council's fleet directly. Her maneuvers were precise and decisive. She struck at the strongest ships first, disabling them without destroying life unnecessarily. Every action carried risk, but she knew the consequences of failure: the Council's execution and the destruction of humanity. Her soldiers watched in awe, some whispering about disobedience, others about loyalty. In that moment, Saria became something different, not just a Volari general, but a bridge between two worlds. Darius fought alongside her indirectly, sensing her guidance in every move. He remembered their first meeting, the taste of blood, the words that had shaken both of them. Now, in the chaos of war, he understood their meaning fully. She had seen what made humans extraordinary, and she had chosen to honor it. The final confrontation occurred near the heart of the Volari fleet. The High Council's flagship loomed ahead, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. Darius's squadron and Saria's forces coordinated to isolate it, striking in ways the Volari had never experienced. Darius's heart pounded as his ship took hits from the Council's defensive fire. Sparks flew across the cockpit. Yet he pressed on. Humanity had come too far to falter now. On the Council's flagship, chaos reigned. Volari soldiers turned against their own leaders, confused and enraged. Saria's defiance had shattered the strict obedience that had made the Empire so fearsome. Finally, Darius and his squadron reached the flagship. Using a combination of clever maneuvers and precise attacks, they disabled its shields. Saria, in her own vessel, delivered the final strike, a controlled, precise attack that left the Council's flagship crippled, but without mass loss of life. The High Council was defeated, Not through brute force alone, but because one warrior had chosen a different path. Seria's gamble had worked. Humanity had survived. The Velari fleet withdrew, confused and leaderless. When the battle ended, silence returned to the stars. Wreckage floated through space, but the living endured. Human colonies had survived, thanks in no small part to one alien general who had defied her empire. Darius docked at the nearest safe station, exhausted but alive. His crew cheered, but he barely heard them. His thoughts were with Seria. Somewhere out there she was watching the aftermath, her fate uncertain. Then, through the encrypted channel, her voice came again. "You survived," she said softly. "Yes," Darius replied. "Thanks to you in part. You risked everything for us." Her tone was quiet, reflective. "I once thought tasting your blood was my end. But now I see. It was my beginning. Perhaps for both our peoples." Darius felt a strange warmth. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. Humanity endures. And sometimes even enemies can become allies when they understand each other." Seria did not respond immediately. Finally, she whispered, "Maybe one day our peoples will meet not as enemies, but as equals. Until then, fight with your spirit intact, human. That is what makes you strong." The channel closed. Darius stared at the stars, knowing that the universe had changed. Humanity had survived the greatest threat it had ever faced, not through overwhelming power, but through courage, hope, and the choices of those who understood them. Far away, Seria stood on her flagship, her soldiers unaware of the storm inside her. She had betrayed her empire, yet she had upheld a higher truth. That strength without spirit was meaningless. She gazed at the stars and whispered to herself, "Perhaps this human is not my end, but the beginning of something greater." Back on the Valiant Dawn, Darius addressed his crew. "Today we fought and today we survived. Not because we were stronger than them, but because we never gave up, because we endured. Remember this. Humanity's strength is not just in our ships or weapons, it's in our hearts." The crew cheered, united by hope, courage, and the knowledge that they had faced impossible odds and won. Humanity had shown the galaxy that endurance, spirit, and hope could turn the tide of war. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a Velari general carried that truth with her, knowing that the galaxy had changed forever. The stars shone brighter that night, not because the war was over, but because two species, once enemies, had glimpsed the possibility of understanding, respect, and shared destiny. Humanity had survived, and the universe would remember it.